Well, taxi violence remains a major concern still in the Cape Town area. At least 25 people have been killed in related violence in the Western Cape since the beginning of this year. And recently, a 5-year-old girl was left paralyzed in violence that broke out after the murder of a taxi boss. Let's discuss this further with Western Cape Transport MEC Bonginkonsi Madikizela joining us from Cape Town this lunchtime. Good to speak to you, MEC. So we were expecting you to meet with some leaders from the taxi industry late Monday. This is yesterday. Has that meeting happened, and what is the progress?
Good afternoon, Tembegile, and good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, that meeting did take place. There were two issues that we discussed at that meeting, but the most important one was to deal with the impasse in Laingsburg, where the contract for the workers who are working in the two wind farms in Laingsburg were given to the taxis that are from the Eastern Cape. And obviously that became a big issue, particularly from the operators of the Western Cape. And we resolved that yesterday, and those taxis will now be going back to Eastern Cape. And the contract to transport workers to those wind farms will now be given to the associations from the Western Cape. But the second issue, Tembegile, was the one that you started with. I wanted to raise my concern with the taxi leadership, because we cannot continue like this, where as government we are making a commitment to really invest massively in this industry in the Western Cape. And I cannot do that under these conditions where people continue to be targeted and killed. So both meetings really came out with some kind of resolutions. And today, the team from my department and the associations and the leadership are thrashing out the operational matters to deal with the impasse in Laingsburg.
And you see, the issue, MEC, is you did have another meeting late 2020 when we saw another string of killings. Yet here we are in the first 4 months of the new year. 25 people have already been murdered, and a lot of people will look on and say, well, why do you think anything different will happen now? Because you've always pleaded for calm, but that call goes ignored.
Well, I think there are two things that are happening, Tembegile, and I think we need to separate the two. What we saw before was a violence where innocent people were caught in the crossfire, which was the big concern for me. And I think after those engagements with the police, with the leadership of the taxi industry, we have seen some improvement in that regard. But what we are seeing now is completely different phenomenon, where certain leaders are targeted. So this is not, some kind of violence that is happening in particular routes, but these are leaders that are targeted because of this rivalry. And some of that rivalry is happening internally in the associations themselves, and some are happening between the associations. And I must commend SEPS, because a lot of work has been done, a lot of people have been arrested in this regard. But what makes matters even worse, Tembegile, is the fact that while we expect the SEPS to help us, they are also implicated in this, as you saw in the report about the extortion. And so this is a very complex matter because of that.
I'm glad you bring that up, MEC, because in your appeal over the weekend, you then appeal to people in the Western Cape communities to come forward with information on these assassins who are essentially going around on hits and taking leaders out in the taxi industry. Why would people want to come forward when you yourself have admitted that even members of the police service are involved in working with some of these people?
Well, I have faith in the majority of the SAPS members, Tembegile, because the fact that we have managed to make these arrests is because of the hard-working members of SEPS who are honest, who are doing their work, because we can't afford to paint everyone with the same brush just because there are members of SEPS who are implicated. In fact, it's SEPS members as well who are assisting us to point their own colleagues who are implicated in this. So we must have some faith, in the system. And the fact that we've managed to see more than 100 arrests already is because of these hard-working men and women in blue. And therefore, what we want to see now happening is exactly where we are, where we go beyond just hitmen, where we really arrest the police that are involved and also the people who are paying the hitmen who are involved in this. And I'm quite really encouraged with the investigation and the people that were starting to arrest thus far.
Arrests are good and well, MEC. It's the convictions that I would imagine would be a bigger deterrent, because as long as people aren't actually being sentenced, these attacks will continue, as we've just seen this weekend.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Thembekile, and unfortunately, I have very little influence in that. I think it's a problem for the entire country that our criminal justice system is very disjointed, and the concern about the conviction is a very serious one. I mean, you remember that even in the gang violence that we are seeing in the Western Cape, the last time I checked, the conviction rate was only 3%, because the gangs themselves are working with people higher up, including the higher-ranking police officers. And this really makes, matters very, very difficult, for the department and the people who are trying to really curb crime. And I'm very happy that the Minister of Police was here, and I certainly hope that with his assistance, we will be able to really turn things around.
All right, let's leave it there. Western Cape Transport MEC Bonginkonsi Madikizela speaking to us about the ongoing taxi violence there. Crisis, 25 people killed so far this year.